Your near-death experience was based off of depression, wasn't it? Was it? It was a suicide near-death experience, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
So do you want to briefly go over again what basically happened?
Yeah, basically, it started from when I was 6 months old. My mom threw me in a dumpster, and pretty much, like my whole life, I was like from home to home, and uh, I felt depressed a lot of years, and pretty much it just caught up to me. Uh, by the time I was maybe like 25, 26 years old, and I know I was maybe like 24 actually at the time, and I just said, you know what, screw it, because I tried like the, I tried the hard drugs, drinking, and all that stuff just wasn't doing it. I was like, you know what, I'm out of here. I just was suicidal, so I'm like, I'm just gonna kill myself. Cause I feel like nobody wanted me anyway, and I just like unfortunately had a life full of like sadness and people who didn't really care much for me. I didn't have really good friends. I was like the only good person. I was the people I would hang out with. I always felt like so different. I ended
Hmm.
up just trying to commit suicide one day, and basically I had talked to my mom, which I haven't talked to in years, and yeah, during like ironically that same day I was planning on killing myself. She calls my grandma. She gets the number. She gets my phone number from my grandma, and my grandma didn't tell me she was gonna give her my number. So she basically ends up um, calling me and telling me she just wanted me to know that she didn't want me. She didn't love me. So, uh, and she'll never be my mom.
Hmm.
So I had ended up. I was on the phone with her, and I was in my friend's car. I'm in the driver's seat. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm in the passenger
The
seat. My
passenger
friend's
seat.
in the
Yeah.
driver's seat. Yeah. So I just rolled down the window, tossed the phone, because she said, I'm not your mom. I said, F you, you never were. Rolled down the window, tossed out the phone, and then looked at my friend and said, F this, opened the door, jumped out, and that's when I left my body.
Hmm. So, and when you left your body, was it head trauma that caused you to effectively die at that point?
I think it was because I do remember the back of my head hitting the concrete and making a boom sound, which that's where the title for my book came from.
Right.
And my editor had the bright idea of saying, well, hey, you bring up the boom when you hit your head, so let's call your book that boom.
Hmm. It's a good idea. So, from your memory of the experience, then was it open the car door, jump out, boom noise straight out of the body, or was there a period of unconsciousness before then?
Um, no, pretty much I felt the blackout as soon as my head hit the concrete. As
So
soon as
there
that
was
boom happened, that's when it all was just black from there.
so it was black from there, and then you had this experience of being outside the body. So it wasn't kind of an instant jumping out of the car straight into out of body experience.
No,
Right. So what was the experience between that point?
the out of body experience, basically, uh,
Sorry,
I,
before the out of body experience during your period of blackness.
oh, um, I just know there was like a few seconds where I just seen nothing but black.
Hmm.
And
So you
I
were
was,
conscious, but you were just experiencing blackness.
I don't know if I was conscious or not. I can't, I don't really know
Yeah,
because,
it's difficult because if you weren't conscious, then it would seem that time wouldn't have passed, so you wouldn't have had the experience of blackness. It would have just been kind of on and off, off and
yeah.
on. So right, okay. So what happened in the actual near death experience then?
Well, when I was laying there on the ground, I knew a few seconds passed by and I was trying to get up. And something kept telling me, like, I wouldn't get up, I wouldn't get up. And as the more I was trying to get up, the more I felt like these weird people, like, yanking me back down. They didn't want me to leave my body, which I didn't know I was leaving my body. I thought I was just getting up. But as soon as I get up, I see my body. And I'm like, wait a minute, how am I looking at my body, but I'm standing up right here? And I started walking back home. I say about 3 steps I took, and that's when I was in midair, and that's when I felt God's presence. God slash source. Some people like to call him source. Some people have different names, but that's when I felt that
Hmm.
spirit.
It's difficult to use the word God because it carries so much baggage with it.
Yeah, and it's I think God will maybe like I feel like it keeps the actual entity like titled or something. Like
Hmm.
yeah, like you don't want to put a title to the name.
To the name, no.
Yeah,
Because
you
as soon
can't
as you
put a
think of
name,
God, as soon as you think of God, most people think of a big guy with a harp and a big beard
and
controlling everybody.
that's what I thought too. I
Mm.
thought that all my life, but I was always in search for the truth, and pretty much I would go from church to church, and I was just always in search for the truth. So I never really believed that God was his actual name. But yeah, so that's when I felt the being's love and was telling me that he loves me, he loves all of us, and um, he wanted me to go back and tell everyone that he loves them.
Hmm. And
And he gave me
this was all a feeling you had, or was there kind of a word-based communication, or was it
it
just
was word based, but it was like more it wasn't audible like blah 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 blah, you can hear it. It was more like telepathy. You felt it here and you heard it here
mm.
in your mind.
Is there any way of kind of explaining what that feeling was like in words, or is it?
Powerful, ultimate, like the ultimate supreme thing. It's like when you feel the spirit and you can't run because you know it's so real. It's right there in your face.
Right.
That's exactly what it was.
Hmm.
And then after feeling God's love and squeeze me and give me a hug, like the spirit lets go, and then I end up meeting my guardian angels, and I'm like get me out of here, get me out of here. I was freaking out, and they were keeping me calm and telling me don't worry about anything, I'll be okay. And yeah, they're just like it's okay, you're okay. Um, there's nothing to be scared of. And they told me to look down. I looked down at my body, and literally it's like a camera that zoomed in. It's like I'm in the sky. Then I look down, and I see the ambulance there, the cop cars here. Then here's the all the paramedics over my body, like in a circle. Like I remember that. And the friend I was with was off to the side on their phone.
Hmm. And was there any sort of verification of that afterwards?
Um, yeah, I actually I told them, I said, "Were you off to the side?" And they said, "Yeah. How did you know that?" And I said, "Because I was literally looking down and saw me laying there. I saw the paramedics here. Then I saw you off to the side." She goes, "Yeah, they made me sit off to the side."
Right.
Hmm.
So what makes you think that this experience was a real objective experience as opposed to kind of a hallucination caused by brain trauma or lack of oxygen, etc.?
Yeah, you know what? I actually heard that before. Like you're hallucinating, you're crazy, you're seeing things. But the thing is, when something like that happens, you can't hallucinate that type. So like, how is there proof that I think honestly my proof was when I was telling my friend, like, were you off to the side when you guys thought I was dead? And she goes, yes, I was off to the side on this side. And I'm like, you were on your phone. She says, yes, I was on my phone. How did you know? I'm like, because I saw you. And then I looked down, and my proof, another proof that my own guardian angels wanted to show me, they kept telling me to look down. No, you're stubborn. You need to look down again. And I'm looking down. They're like, that's your body. I'm like, how can I be here, but I'm looking down at my body laying there? And they're like, because you're not in there anymore. So I'm like, this really does happen. And they say, yes, it really does happen.
Hmm. It's always good to get that kind of some form of objective verification, mainly because we grow up in this framework where we need that sort of thing to believe.
Yeah.
Seeing is
And
believing, as they say,
yeah,
and
and they
that
told
just
me
kind
they
of.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, and that sort of verification really does solidify that experience for yourself. as true. I mean, it would for me. I'd need something like that before I could believe it.
Right, and I felt like that was my proof, because if I would have went back and said, "Hey, oh," because there also was like this circle in this cloud. If I were to have if I were to went into that circle, I would have went to like heaven. I was really, literally like on the outside of it, but I didn't go because who knows if I probably would have even came back or not. But they were like, "No, don't go in there yet. Like, we need to, we need you to see something." They tell me to look at my body, and that's when I see myself laying there, like, oh my god, like, and it was like the camera that zoomed in, so it was like right there, like a close up.
Hmm. So it was, yeah. So it was as if your point of consciousness was like the zoom of a camera. So your field of view literally went as if you were moving forward.
Right.
So did you have any form? Any when you looked down, did you see Chris's hands, or was it just, as some people experience, just a point of awareness?
Being up in the air, you mean when I'm looking down?
Yeah.
When I'm looking down,
When you're in the air during the main part of the
I didn't
experience.
see anything on myself, no, because I was too freaked out to even look at myself. I didn't look
Right.
at myself. I looked at
Hmm.
my angels. I looked at what they were wearing, what they looked like. When I looked down on my body, I looked at my friend. I looked at the paramedics. I looked at everything that was there, but I did not look at myself.
Okay. So when you looked down, you didn't see any like human legs or any kind of body.
No, because I was just focused on actually looking at my own body laying there on the ground.
Right. So you wouldn't have noticed anything, even if it was there. And you wrote a book about this, didn't you? Was it Boom
The life and times of a suicide near-death experiencer.
Experiencer? That's right. And unfortunately, when a near-death experiencer brings out a book, people will think straight away they're trying to capitalise off of this. They've made the story up or they've exaggerated it so that they could write a book and make money from the book.
Yeah.
Which is the case with you, with Eben Alexander, with the lady that recovered from cancer after her near-death experience, I can't remember, and the doctor who drowned. It always comes back to, you see the comments, let me guess, this person wrote a book. Yes, they did. Well, they're out to make money. So what would you say to that allegation?
I would say that if that was the case, I would really, really promote my book a lot more than I do. Um, I'd probably try to get with like the best publishers, the best everything. My only purpose of writing this book is my first book, and I didn't even know I was supposed to do this book. It just came as I'm writing down and jotting down my experiences, and it turns into a book. And I just basically wanted the main moral of this is of people that read this book. I want them to get something out of it, especially if they know someone or themselves are suicidal, or and a lot of people are. Suicide is very underrated. It's under talked about, and we should talk about it more.
Yeah, and it's
Because,
becoming a lot more common in especially people kind of our age and younger
yeah,
as
and my
pressures mount.
right, and I also want to motivate people who are suicidal. So it's more like, hey, guess what? This is one of your kind. Like, let me tell you, things can get better. People do love you. There's a bright side of life. You don't see it, but you can find it. Just look for it. There's a bright side of life. And a suicidal person that's really, really attempted it, they don't really have people. They don't really think that they have people to confide in.
No.
So they just figure if they do it, no one's gonna miss them. I don't really take suicide as a joke, like at all, because if somebody says they're suicidal, I don't take it lightly, because it's really the ones who really don't talk about it, because they're done talking about it. They talk about it, they quit talking about it, and then they just do it.
Yeah, I got to that stage when I was 16 and I had a mental breakdown, an emotional breakdown due to many different things, pressures at school, and I was living with anxiety disorder at that point, which I still am, but it was bad back then. And I got very close. I wouldn't have done it because I was always frightened of experiencing eternal nothingness, which is what I thought death was back then. Before I did all this research, and when you get to that point, that low, you feel so helpless that either you live the rest of your life in this void of total helplessness, or you end your life and get out. And it's what people don't seem to appreciate is that at that point, suicide is a real option, and it seems the only option that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
Because it's either that and be at peace forever, or you continue this life seemingly purposelessly and suffer for the rest of your life. So many people opt to jump out early, and full respect to those that do, because it's bloody difficult at that point. Very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And it's very much underappreciated.
Yeah, it is.
When people say I'm suicidal, and they say, oh, a lot of people will say, don't worry, you're fine, you'll get over it.
Get over it.
Get over it, yeah. And it's bad for men as well, because we're told, man up, you're supposed to be strong, you're supposed to be this, you're not supposed to feel emotions.
It's worse for men, way worse, because at least like with a girl, they could tell someone. And they're like, oh, girl, you're crazy. At least for a dude, I can't speak for everyone, but from the situations that I came and the neighborhoods I was in, the people that I knew, you can't tell these guys something like that. I've tried, and the only thing was the message I got was, one of the responses I got was, "Can I have your equipment, your studio equipment?"
You're great, yeah. That's just the support you need, isn't it? But men have had to grow up from since they were very young with this sense of masculinity. Even though it's changing now, but the original view was, even when I was a kid, was the man is the provider for the woman. When you're married, the man is the one that has to tough through everything. You're not supposed to cry as a man. You're not supposed to feel emotions. You're supposed to ignore that and kind of overwrite them, which unfortunately is denying the nature of not just being a man but being a human.
Mm-hmm.
Men aren't allowed to cry, and as a result, a lot of men never have that catharsis of emotion. It builds up and builds up and builds up, and what happens? Like a geyser, pressure builds. It's got to come out eventually, whether it is allowed to come out through crying and other catharsis, or whether it forces itself out from suppression.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I think, men need to be a lot more understanding to their own needs, not to what society thinks they should be, because that can become very dangerous.
Yeah.
So what started off your depression? Was it from an early age?
Oh yeah. The foster homes that I was in, that's what caused my depression already. How they treated me as a kid was horrible. Like I brought up in my book, I said at the age of 4 years old, I came to the decision that there's none of these adults in this house make me feel good. They make me feel bad. I'm gonna make myself feel good. I'm gonna grow up now. So I'm basically gonna raise myself and train myself for life. And I was 4 years old when I made that decision.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's difficult, but it's a good time to start, because you have that whole life to kind of learn yourself.
You have the life to mess up, to learn from mistakes, to do things right, and then to keep knowing how to do these things right, and then knowing what not to do, because this didn't work then, so I'm not going to do this anymore. Like, you start learning things about yourself. And it sucks sometimes, because it could have been a lot easier had you had that mom or dad to sort of boost you. Because like all my friends got boosts in life. Like they had everything before I did. Like they had their cars, their houses, they had everything before I did. They always had that backbone, like mommy, or I'm gonna call dad, or mommy and daddy. To me, it was more like, I'll see you guys at the finish line, like. So
yeah,
I
and
had to do it all myself.
I was very lucky in that sense, because I have a mum and a dad who are understanding. Dad, it took a little bit longer, but over the time, because he was brought up with that men are very much, they don't feel emotion, that sort of thing. get up and get over it. That was his kind of position. That's how he was brought up. But he came round after a few years, and I had that support there, luckily. But although it's easier, it still doesn't mean that just because you come from a loving background or a well-to-do background that you won't therefore have. I mean, look at Robin Williams, very well off, his life was very well set, but that doesn't make a difference when it comes to depression. You know, people say, how can you be depressed when there are people in Africa starving, having to walk miles to get water? All that's irrelevant, because if you've got depression, you've got depression. It doesn't pick and choose who's going to have it and how badly it's going to affect them. And just putting that guilt trip forward doesn't help, because then you start to think, yeah, I'm right, I shouldn't be moping. I'm a terrible person because I'm moping about it when my life is so good. And it makes you dig further into that hole. And it's just a lack of understanding again.
Yeah. Man, that's true.
It's difficult.
Yeah, it's true, because I've had many friends that were, well off as well. They were like depressed, and I was that one, like especially like in junior high and like high school. I'm like, what are you moping about? Like, you have everything.
You might have everything, but if inside you're in turmoil, that means nothing, because nothing has value. You might have millions and millions of dollars, but if you have depression, none of that has any value to you whatsoever.
Yeah.
And if it does, it only gives temporary fixes. It's nice to have a nice car and a big house, but if you're not happy inside, what's the point?
Yeah.
I mean, some of the happiest, most contented people you see are these Tibetan monks who live in caves and meditate daily with nothing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, the whole idea of God having a plan for you, or if you decide your life and your path before you're born, I don't know if that's true or not, but it certainly seems that for some, there is a distinct path they need to follow, and any deviation from it, based on what society tells them they should be, causes all these kind of problems.
I've had a few dreams of like past lives that I've had, and as far as the whole you have a plan here type thing, I still have questions about that. I do know that from the past life stream I had, something that they have in common is I was like a horrible person, like in all of those dreams. So it's like what I'm hoping for is maybe like this life that I'm in now, I'll like get it right. So maybe like my path for this life is to fix a lot of other past lives that I've had where I was a horrible person. So I think
so
like that's why like rich or poor, whatever I do, I have to be a good to people. Like I have
so
to
maybe your experience this lifetime with depression and suicidal tendencies, and your attempted suicide, was maybe to cause a very painful but very necessary shift in your consciousness from these past lives into a more spiritual based and good.
Because I know in the past lives I didn't really care for spirituality. So who knows? Hopefully this life is the one that I get it right. Yeah.
But if it's not, then there's always next time, I suppose. I mean, again, I don't know about reincarnation. I've never studied it, but I know folks like Jim Tucker and Ian Stevenson have done a lot of extensive research in it, which I need to look into a bit more, but I haven't touched on that yet, so I don't really know how it works. But there's a lot of books by Michael Newton. Do you know Michael Newton?
Heard of him.
He did life between lives research, hypnosis. He did Journey and Destiny of Souls, which were cases of thousands of people who went to their past lives in their hypnotherapy sessions and then went beyond their death of those past lives into the period between after they died and before they were born into their current life. And what they were saying there about planning their lives and sorting out the karma, I suppose, of what they'd done before. I mean, that's interesting because, again, they all say very, very similar things, and he was able to draw a map of kind of what happens from these thousands and thousands of cases. The question to me, though, about planning your life is, where then does free will come into it?
I think maybe because I'm still trying to put that stuff together too. So what I'm thinking is just a guess, maybe stuff that you do here. I really don't. Because some people pick their own. They say like they pick their parents. They pick the lifestyle they want to live and all that stuff. So it's kind of like the only thing I can really say is like, yeah, maybe it is a bunch of karma. Like, because I was an asshole in the past lives I've had. So it's like maybe a lot of stuff that has happened in my life, current like ever since 6 months on, that could have a lot of the stuff could have been karma. So I don't know. I don't know. Like the way I look at karma too, it's sort of like something that really goes around because from experience, like let's say for example, my son's mom, right? Like I was kind of like mean to her. Like I wasn't not all the time. I wasn't like the best boyfriend all the time. I wasn't the worst either. But it's more like some of the worst started to outweigh the best. So then a lot of the stuff I did to her after dating her, there was about 3 girls in a row that I dated that all slaughtered me. Like horrible. These are like the worst ever heartbreaks ever. But it wasn't just one to get revenge from or to even out from my ex. It was 1, 2, 3, all consecutive in a row.
Mm. So maybe the point of that was that you needed those 3 to kind of recognize what you had done before and to learn from that.
That's
and it needed kind of a tough lesson.
Right. Yeah.
And negative experiences like that will teach you so much more than any positive experience ever could.
And all that taught me exactly how not to treat a woman, which I knew before. It's just that's how it was before, but for some reason my son's mom, it started getting bad. Her family was in this situation and it was upsetting, and I just ended up saying, you know what, I was like 18, 19 years old, so I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go out and cheat on you now, like type thing.
Yeah. So what would you say to people at the moment suffering with depression who are maybe suicidal?
Look at the good side of things. There's always gonna be sunshine after your rain, like so to speak. There's always you have to go through hell in order to get to something good a lot of times. So stick it out and also talk to someone. Like you have to talk to someone, even though you don't talk to as many people as you can. Just let them know how you feel. Don't worry about being judged. Don't worry about any of that. Because honestly, your life of being judged, I'd rather you should just rather just tell someone, because then you can avoid a lot of, because then it's like, I look at it this way. If someone's suicidal, they kill themselves. I know they don't care about it at the moment because I didn't either, but what a suicidal person doesn't see or think about is after the fact. What's going to happen after I do this? You're going to leave a lot of people heartbroken. People that you thought didn't care, and they're going to end up telling you is, how come you didn't tell me anything? You could have told me.
I think that's the important thing, is make sure you tell someone. Because if you don't, you're facing it alone, and you're facing every suppressed emotion alone. And it will keep building, it will get worse and worse and worse until you eventually do burst. And then it's too late.
Yep.
And don't be worried about what you believe you should be. Worry about what you are, and don't try and fake any kind of happy face or any kind of image that you're not, because that's just going against your nature.
Right.
And that's when the problems come. Yeah. So always be as open as possible about these things.
Yeah.
Because it's common, very, very common. More common than we realise, because so many people just won't talk about it. I mean, everybody I've spoken to, I've met a few people online my sort of age through gaming or whatever other reason, and 90% of them have told me that they're suffering with depression or anxiety or something very similar. So it is incredibly, incredibly common, and depression leaves you with the feeling that there's nobody else that understands, and that hopeless feeling of being completely alone, which is not true, but that's what your mind convinces you.
You're already convinced.
Yeah. So it's having that confidence to kind of, it's having that confidence to kind of think that maybe that's not the case. Maybe it's just an illusion that my mind's telling me. Right. I should tell someone and see, and then you realise you know, wow, there's so many people going through this sort of thing. It's natural. It's not a negative thing. It's a very, very strong life lesson that will make you 50 times stronger if you can ride it out, and emotionally and mentally much more stable than most of the population are, who never have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So I think that's the important thing.